The last transmission from Summit Station came on a Tuesday. It was a routine check-in. Dr. Eleanor Marsh, the lead geophysicist, reporting weather conditions and drilling progress. She sounded tired, the way people always sound after weeks at the top of the world with nothing but ice and wind for company. A little hoarse, a little flat, but otherwise fine. Then the radio went quiet. For the first 12 hours, no one at the Arctic Research Coordination Center in Fairbanks paid much attention. Communications dropped all the time in the far north. Solar flares, equipment failures, the sheer indifference of a landscape that has never cared whether human beings live or die. The duty officer logged it, flagged it as a routine interruption, and went back to her coffee. By hour 24, the tone had changed. Summit Station sat at the northern tip of the Brooks Range, accessible only by a single gravel airstrip that was itself only usable in daylight and in winds below 30 knots. It housed a team of 6 researchers, a cook named Dmitri, who had survived 2 winters up there, and claimed it had cured him of all desire for human company, and enough drilling equipment to bore a hole nearly a mile into the ice sheet below. That ice sheet was why they were there. Dr. Marsh and her team had been drilling as part of a long-term climate research project, studying ancient air bubbles trapped in the ice to reconstruct the atmosphere of the distant past. It was painstaking, exacting work, and it had been going well. Their last formal report, filed 48 hours before the silence, had described something extraordinary, ice cores showing a biological signature far deeper than any previously recorded. Ancient organic material, perhaps microbial, locked in strata, estimated to be over 100,000 years old. No one in Fairbanks found this alarming at the time. They would. The 4-person rescue team assembled in under 6 hours. Dr. James Calloway, a virologist who had worked in extreme environments from Greenland to Antarctica, led the group. Beside him stood Dr. Priya Nair, a biologist with a specialty in extremophile organisms, life that thrives in conditions that would kill everything else. The 2 field technicians, brothers named Cole and Russ Harker, rounded out the team. Cole was the quiet one. Russ talked enough for both of them. Their small aircraft lifted off from Fairbanks at 4 in the afternoon, into a sky the color of old tin. The flight north took 2 hours. For most of it, no one spoke. They watched the landscape below transform from patchy spruce forest into open, tundra into a white expanse, so featureless and enormous, it seemed less like a place and more like an absence, as though the earth had simply given up trying down there and handed everything over to the cold. "You know what I always think when I fly over the Arctic?" Russ said, pressing his face against the window. "No one knows what you think," Cole said. "That's the only thing that keeps life worth living." Russ grinned. "I always think nothing's supposed to be alive down there, and yet," he shrugged. "Here we are." No one answered him. They landed at the station's airstrip just as the sun was scraping the horizon, painting the snow a brief and violent orange. The airstrip looked normal. The skis of the station's own aircraft were visible beside the hangar, which meant no one had fled. The supply lines were intact. A trail of boot prints in the snow led from the hangar toward the main station building, about 80 meters away. The boot prints ended halfway there. The main station door was unlocked. Inside, the heat was still running. The automatic systems had kept the temperature at a steady 58 degrees, which felt almost tropical after the world outside. The lights were on. A pot of coffee sat on the burner in the kitchen area, long since burned down to a scorched black crust at the bottom. Dishes were in the sink. A paperback novel lay face down on the common room table, its spine cracked, a mug ring staining the cover. Everything looked like a moment interrupted. "Hello?" Calloway called. The echo came back thin and flat. No response. They moved through the station in pairs. Calloway and Priya taking the lab wing, Cole and Russ checking the sleeping quarters. The lab was meticulously organized, which felt slightly wrong given the circumstances. Samples were labeled, equipment was stored, notebooks were stacked in order. Whoever had been working here had not left in a rush. Then Priya found the greenhouse. Summit Station's greenhouse was a small, pressurized annex attached to the lab, technically a hydroponic chamber for growing fresh herbs and vegetables, a small luxury the station's designers had included for crew mental health. It was, at present, being used for something else entirely. 4 of the 6 sample cases from the drilling site were inside, arranged in a careful semicircle around the central work table. The table itself was covered in equipment, slides, microscopes, sample dishes, a portable DNA sequencer still running its analysis. The air in the greenhouse had a strange quality to it, slightly heavier than it should have been, with a faint organic smell underneath the normal scents of the station. Priya pulled up the sequencer's readout. She stared at it for a long time without moving. "James," she said quietly. Calloway appeared in the doorway. "What is it?" "The organism they found." She pointed at the screen. "It's not like anything in the database, but," she hesitated, "the structure of it, the way it interacts with surrounding tissue in these slides." She pulled up an image. Under the microscope, curling around the edge of a thin slice of ice core, was something small and translucent and worming. "It's a parasite, and it's not dead." The sound from the sleeping quarters arrived at exactly that moment. A wet, deliberate thump, like something large rolling over in the dark. Russ appeared in the corridor, his face the color of old snow. "You need to come see this," he said. Right now, they found the first survivor in the bunk at the far end of the sleeping quarters. His name was Dr. Aaron Voss, and he had been the station's geologist, a calm-voiced man of 52 who had spent 3 previous winters in the Arctic and described himself as constitutionally immune to panic. He was alive. His eyes were open, but he was not calm. He had wedged himself into the corner between the bed and the wall, knees pulled to his chest, and was staring at the door with an expression that contained no relief at their arrival, only a deep animal suspicion. A livid bruise darkened the left side of his face. His right hand was pressed hard against the side of his neck, where a small, angry-looking wound was visible between his fingers. "Don't come closer," he said. His voice was barely above a whisper. "Don't. Aaron?" Calloway kept his tone carefully neutral. "We're from the coordination center. We're here to help." "You can't help." His eyes moved between them, fast and darting. "You don't understand what's in here." "The organism," Priya said softly, "from the ice core." That made him go very still. "You already know. Tell us what happened." He was quiet for a long moment. His hand never moved from his neck. "It started with the dogs," he said finally. There were no dogs at Summit Station. That was the first thing. They had not brought any. There were no kennels in the facility records, no entries in any supply manifest for dog food or equipment. When Calloway pointed this out, Voss laughed, a low, fractured sound with no humor in it. "No," he said, "I know. That's why it scared her." Her was Dr. Marsh, the team lead. Voss described what had happened in pieces, circling around it the way a person circles a fire, getting as close as they can bear and then retreating. 3 days before the transmission silence, he said, the drilling had reached a new depth, far deeper than planned. Following the biological signal, Marsh had identified in earlier cores. At approximately 1,100 meters below the surface, the drill had hit something unexpected. A large void in the ice, roughly spherical, about the size of a shipping container. The surrounding ice bore marks of ancient pressure, as though something large had once been compressed there by the weight of millennia and had since diminished, dissolved, left behind only the shape of its absence, and a fine dark residue on the ice walls, and a small colony of living organisms in the residue, thread-like, translucent, sluggish in the cold, but not dead. They had documented everything properly. They had followed the protocols for novel biological discovery. They had brought the ice cores up to the station and begun preliminary analysis. That night, the sound started. It came from outside the station, low and rhythmic, barely audible above the wind. Not mechanical, organic, like breathing, but wrong-paced, wrong-scaled, too slow for anything familiar. Dr. Marsh had been the first to hear it. She had noted it in her log as possible acoustic anomaly, cause undetermined, and gone back to sleep. By the second night, 3 other team members had heard it. By the third, everyone had. And on the morning of the 4th day, Dr. Yuki Sato, the team's youngest member, a second-year doctoral student from Hokkaido University, had gone to the common room for breakfast and told everyone, with complete calm and absolute certainty, that she had seen dogs running in the dark outside her window. A whole pack of them, she said, gray and enormous, running in circles around the station. She had watched them for almost an hour. Her window faced a solid wall. There was no exterior view from her sleeping quarter. By that afternoon, Sato had been restrained for attacking Dr. Patel, the team's medic, with a drilling tool. By that evening, they had discovered the worm. It lives in the nervous system, Priya said. She was back in the greenhouse lab now, studying the sequencer output with the focused intensity of someone trying to outrun their own fear with information. If I'm reading this right, and I think I am, it migrates to the base of the brain, the hypothalamus, the amygdala. It triggers paranoia, Calloway said. Aggression. And worse. She pulled up another slide. Look at the behavior pattern. It's not random aggression. It's targeted. The infected host becomes extremely sensitive to perceived threats, fixated on identifying and eliminating sources of danger. She paused. Real or imagined? It makes you fight, Cole said from the doorway. It makes you survive, Priya said. From the organism's perspective, a host that's constantly vigilant, constantly ready for violence, is a host that's harder to kill. The worm is protecting its investment. She looked up. The dogs probably weren't hallucinations. Not exactly. They were threat projections. The amygdala, overstimulated, generating danger signals. The brain making predators out of shadows. Russ had not spoken for several minutes. He was standing very still near the door, and Calloway noticed now that he had one hand pressed against the back of his neck, fingers probing slowly. Russ, Calloway said. I'm fine, Russ said. He did not turn around. Russ, look at me. A long pause. Then, very slowly, Russ turned. His face was still his face. The same easy features, the same slight stubble, the same freckle beside his left eye. But something in the arrangement of it was different. The eyes, perhaps. The way they moved, darting, cataloging, calculating. I said I'm fine, he repeated. Why do you keep looking at me like that? What are you not telling me? Calloway kept his voice carefully even. I need to see your neck. Don't touch me. Low, flat, absolute. Cole stepped forward. Russ, I said don't touch me. His voice cracked on the last word into something raw and animal, and he took 3 steps back until his shoulders hit the wall, and his eyes swept the room the way a cornered thing sweeps a room. For exits, for weapons, for the exact geometry of a last resort. The rules of the situation established themselves quickly, with the cold logic of a trap snapping shut. They could not leave. The wind had come up while they were inside. The station's exterior sensors showed gusts at 60 knots. Climbing, the kind of conditions that turned the 100-meter walk to the airstrip into a potential death sentence. They could not fly. The aircraft would be grounded until the storm broke. They did not know when that would be. They could not call for help. The same atmospheric conditions that grounded aircraft were disrupting communications, a fact that struck all 4 of them with a specific and nauseating familiarity, because it was exactly how this situation had begun for the people who were already here, and they could not be certain who among them might already be infected. Priya had worked this out in the greenhouse, while Calloway and Cole secured Russ in the storage room, locked from the outside, provisioned with water and food, a painful solution that Russ had screamed at them through the door for 20 minutes before going silent in a way that was somehow worse than the screaming. "The vector is contact," she said. "I think. Based on the slide samples, the organism is capable of surviving outside a host for short periods, minutes, probably in these temperatures. It can enter through mucous membrane or open wound. A scratch would do it. A bite would definitely do it." She paused. Sato bit Patel. "And Patel?" "I don't know where Patel is." They were now 4 people in a station designed for 6, with 2 original crew members unaccounted for, and 2 others present in uncertain states. Voss still barricaded in his bunk, Russ locked in storage. The 2 surviving original crew, the cook, Dimitri, and Dr. Marsh herself, had not been found. Calloway tried to think systematically. He was good at this, at building a mental architecture around a problem when the problem was designed to make architecture impossible. He had worked through outbreaks before. He knew how fear compresses time and bends logic, how it makes the reasonable seem monstrous, and the monstrous seem like the only rational choice. He also knew, watching Cole across the common room table, that the fact that he felt certain of his own clarity of mind proved absolutely nothing. The parasite would feel like nothing. That was the elegant horror of it, not the dramatic rout of a zombie's jaw, not the obvious wrong of a body changed beyond recognition. Just the same face, the same voice, the same person, retuned by a fraction. The dial turned just slightly toward the frequency of paranoia and violence. You would not know you were infected. You would feel fine. You might even feel, for the first time in years, completely and unusually awake. "We need to check each other," Cole said. "For what?" "We can't run a sequencer fast enough to." "For the mark." Cole rolled up his sleeve. Voss had his hand on his neck. "Russ, we didn't check Russ before we locked him up. But Sato attacked Patel, right? So Patel got bitten. And if Patel is still somewhere in this station," he stopped. "We need to check each other. Neck, wrist, anywhere skin was exposed. And if one of us has a mark?" Cole looked at him steadily. "Then the other one makes a decision. That decision could be made by an infected person about an uninfected one." "Yes," Cole said. "It could." They sat with that for a while. The wind drove at the walls of the station. Somewhere in the building's bones, a beam contracted in the cold and made a sound like a footstep. "Together, then," Priya said, "all 3 of us at once. We all look. We report what we see." Calloway nodded. Cole nodded. They moved into better light. They were 3/4 through this process. Calloway clear, Cole clear, when the lights went out. The emergency lights came on 8 seconds later, dim red strips along the floor, the kind designed to guide evacuation rather than illuminate work. In their glow, the station looked like the interior of something's throat. The power loss was localized. Main circuit, East Junction. Calloway knew the station's layout from the briefing files. The junction box was in the utility corridor beside the kitchen. A failure there was either electrical, a blown fuse, a tripped breaker, or deliberate. He also knew that the utility corridor was where Dr. Patel had last been documented, 3 days ago after Sato attacked him. "Stay here," he told Priya and Cole. "Absolutely not," Priya said. They moved together. Cole had found a long-handled wrench in the toolkit beside the door. Not a weapon, exactly, but heavy enough to be one if it came to that. Calloway carried a flashlight, its beam cutting the red dim dark into slices of white. The kitchen was empty. The smell of burned coffee hung in the air like a question. The utility corridor door was ajar. Calloway pushed it open slowly. The corridor was narrow, barely wide enough for 2 people side by side, with pipes running along the ceiling and the junction box at the far end. A gray metal panel mounted on the wall. The panel door was open. Someone had been at it. The someone was still there. Dr. Patel sat on the floor with his back against the wall and his knees drawn up and his hands folded in his lap with an incongruent neatness, as though he had arranged himself carefully. He was alive. His eyes were open, tracking the flashlight beam as Calloway swept it across him. On his left forearm, just below the elbow, was a bite mark, days old, bruised purple-yellow at the edges. And at the base of his throat, barely visible above his collar, was a small raised line, like a scar that hadn't been there before, moving. Not a scar, moving. "Dr. Patel," Calloway said. "Can you hear me?" Yes. His voice was entirely calm, eerily, horribly calm, the calm of deep water that conceals tremendous depth. "I've been here for a while. I found if I stayed very still, it was manageable. What have you done to the power?" "I tripped the circuit. No apology, no explanation yet. I needed everyone to come to one place. I couldn't find you all separately, and I couldn't." He stopped. His jaw tightened. "I'm aware that I'm not thinking correctly. Parts of me want very much to hurt you. I'm working against that. It's like holding a door shut." He looked at Calloway with eyes that were still his eyes, but full of something ancient and patient and hungry behind them. "I wanted you to know, before things get worse, that I was the one who infected Russ." Silence. He was checking the aircraft. I wasn't in control. I bit him. I didn't mean to." His hands tightened in his lap. "I think you need to know something else. Something I found in Dr. Marsh's final log before He paused. "Before the door started to feel much heavier. She didn't just find the void at 1100 meters. She found the organism reacting to heat, to body heat. It's attracted to warmth. It's been migrating toward the station." His eyes, with effort, moved to the floor. "It's been migrating for days, through cracks in the permafrost, through drainage lines, through..." His head snapped up. His eyes went flat. "Through the pipes," he said, in a voice that was no longer quite his. Calloway grabbed Priya's arm and ran. They ran back through the kitchen, through the common room, and into the lab wing. V. Calloway sealed the door behind them. It was not a proper seal. No door in a research station is designed to keep things out, because nothing is supposed to get in, but it would buy time. And time was the only currency they had left. "The pipes," he said. "The heating system. It pulls water from the glacier below the station, runs it through the thermal exchange." "The organisms followed the water," Priya said. She was already at the microscope, pulling a fresh slide from the case-marked Summit Ice Core. "Day 3. The heating makes this the warmest point in the facility. They've been accumulating." She looked up. "James, they might already be in the air. As the water evaporates, tell me you can kill it." She looked at him. The look contained an entire honest conversation about the limits of improvised solutions to problems that had been evolving for 100,000 years. "The organism is biological," she said. "It can be killed. Temperature extremes, alcohol, UV light." She gestured at the lab's emergency kit, a standard decontamination kit, alcohol solution, UV sterilization wand. "The question is whether it's already inside us. If it were, we'd know. Would we?" The silence stretched. Calloway thought about the last hour. He thought about the slight ringing in his ears that he had attributed to the altitude. He thought about the brief, spiking irritability he had felt when Cole questioned him in the corridor. More intense than it should have been, more animal. He thought about how clear and awake he felt right now, in a situation that should have been generating nothing but confusion. He thought about Patel holding the door shut. He thought, how long before you stop noticing that the door exists? Cole appeared in the lab doorway. He had the wrench still, but his grip on it had changed, tighter, purposeful. His eyes moved between Calloway and Priya with a quick, scanning quality. "We need to talk about getting out," Cole said. "Tonight. I don't care about the wind." 60-knot gusts, Calloway said. "We'd die on the way to the airstrip." We'd die here for sure. We don't know that. I know it. Cole took a step into the lab. I know it. We need to go now. He stopped. His face moved through something complicated. While I still want to leave, he said. His voice had changed, quieter, slower, like a man translating from a language he barely speaks. There's something in me that wants to stay. I keep thinking of reasons to stay. Good-sounding reasons. Reasons that make sense. And he pressed his free hand flat against his thigh, forcing it still. I think we should go. Priya was already at the decontamination kit. She pulled out the UV wand. Cole, hold still. Don't hold still. She swept the wand along the base of his neck, his wrists, the back of his hands. He flinched but held. In the UV light, something on his left wrist fluoresced briefly. A thread-thin line, barely there, already fading. Oh, Cole said. In the quiet that followed, Priya set the wand down on the counter. Her hand was very steady. She picked up the alcohol solution. She met Calloway's eyes. Us too, she said. They began with Calloway. The alcohol solution burned. Not the controlled sting of antiseptic on a scrape, but something deeper and more insistent. A sensation that Priya described with clinical precision as the organism responding defensively to the chemical environment. Which meant the alcohol was working. Which also meant that the faint marks they found on all three of them, Cole's wrist, Calloway's collar, a hair-thin trace along Priya's forearm that she hadn't noticed and couldn't remember acquiring, were not imagination. They had all been exposed. The question now was whether exposure had become infection and whether infection had progressed. The parasite, based on Patel's behavior, appeared to establish itself gradually. Not an immediate takeover, but a slow retuning. A dial turned by degrees so small you might not notice the music changing until the song was entirely different. The alcohol and UV treatment seemed to affect it. Calloway felt the ringing in his ears diminish and then stop. Cole's grip on the wrench loosened, and he set it down with an expression of quiet horror at having been holding it that tightly. Priya took 3 slow breaths and said that she could feel something releasing in her chest, like a fist unclenching. They treated each other 3 times, thorough and methodical. Then Priya turned to the heating system controls on the lab's wall panel. If the organism is migrating through the water system because of heat, she said, and if we lower the station temperature significantly, we interrupt the migration. We may also kill any organisms that have reached the pipes without reaching a host. She looked at the thermostat. We'd need to drop it to near 0 inside the station. Survivable for humans if we have the right gear. She glanced at the equipment storage. This is a polar research station. We have the right gear. And the people who are already infected? Cole said. A pause. The organism doesn't like cold, Priya said. Patel, the way he stayed still, he was fighting it. Cold slows the neurological effects. It might give them more of themselves back. Long enough to get everyone to the aircraft when the storm breaks. That's the theory. What's the part of the theory that might kill us? Priya looked at him steadily. The infected individuals may react badly to being very cold and very aware of how infected they are. The clarity might not be welcome. She picked up the UV wand again. And we'll need to go back through the station. Unlock Russ. Reach Voss. Find Dr. Marsh. Marsh could be anywhere. Yes, she could be the reason Patel sounded the way he sounded. Yes, Priya said. That too. Calloway looked at the thermostat, then at the door, then at both of them in turn. Cole, who was holding himself with the focused stillness of a man who had just discovered what was living in him. Priya, who was looking at the door with the expression of someone about to walk into a burning building because the only alternative is letting the building burn. He reached up and turned the thermostat to its lowest setting. The heating clicked off. Immediately, as if the cold had been waiting just outside the walls for exactly this invitation, the temperature in the lab began to drop. They suited up in silence. They found Russ first. The storage room door opened on a young man sitting cross-legged in the center of the floor, surrounded by the careful arrangement of every item in the room. Canned goods sorted by label, equipment sorted by size, a row of ration bars aligned with geometric precision. His eyes, when he looked up, were different from the last time Calloway had seen them. Less burning, more present. "It's cold," Russ said. "We know. Can you stand?" He could stand. He could walk. He kept his hands visible, which Calloway recognized as a deliberate gesture. "Look, see, nothing in them," and said very little as they moved through the station. Though once, passing through the common room, he paused and looked at his own hands with an expression of specific grief and said, "I think I would have hurt Cole. I think I was planning to." "You didn't," Cole said. "No." He looked at the door of the storage room receding behind them. "I was in there, planning it very carefully. For hours." He exhaled slowly. It felt like logic. It felt like the only sensible thing. They found Voss next, still in his bunk, calmer now in the cold, the vicious edge of his paranoia blunted, though not gone. He told them, in short factual sentences, that Dr. Marsh had been the first of the original team to show severe symptoms, that she had been the one to go outside, which he had assumed meant she was trying to get to the aircraft, to escape or to call for help. He had not, he said, wanted to follow her. They suited up fully and went outside. The storm was weakening. Not gone. The wind still drove across the open ice with a sound like tearing cloth, and the temperature was deep into the -20s. But the worst gusts had passed, and the sky to the east had cleared to show a thin strip of starfield above the horizon. They found Dr. Marsh at the drilling site. She was standing at the edge of the borehole, a circle of darkness in the ice, barely a meter across, dropping 1,100 meters to the void where the organism had lived for 100,000 years before they had come and woken it. She was in full cold weather gear, which was the only reason she was alive, because she had been standing there for a long time. Long enough for her face shield to frost over from the inside. Long enough for her breathing to slow to the deep rhythm of early hypothermia. But she had not gone further. She had not gone in. She was standing at the edge, looking down, and when Calloway put his hand on her arm, she did not pull away. She turned slowly. Behind the frosted face shield, her eyes were open. "I was going to go back in," she said. Her voice, through the intercom, was slurred and slow. "It kept telling me to go back, to take it back down." A long pause. "I've been standing here, arguing with myself for..." She didn't finish the sentence. The cold helped, eventually. Calloway and Cole took her arms and walked her away from the hole. Priya looked at the borehole for a long moment before following. She thought about what lived down there, the ancient dark, the organism that had survived without light or warmth or company for spans of time, so vast that human civilization was a rounding error at the far edge of the calculation. Patient beyond any patience a human mind could hold, waiting in the ice the way a seed waits in the ground, needing only the right warmth to begin. She thought about what it had done to 6 human beings in 4 days. She thought about the way it felt like logic. She turned away from the hole and walked toward the lights of the station without looking back. The storm broke at 3 a.m. They left at first light. All 6 of them were alive. Marsh, Patel, Voss, and Russ had all been treated. The cold treatment and the decontamination, rough and imperfect, but effective enough. None of them were the people they had been a week ago. They all moved through the world with a new and careful quality, like people navigating a room in the dark, finding the furniture by feel and making mental note of each obstacle. The paranoia had not disappeared entirely. Perhaps it never fully would. But it was manageable, which was all you could ask for, which was sometimes all survival ever is. Calloway filed his preliminary report from the aircraft, patching through to Fairbanks on the station's backup satellite connection. He was brief and factual, and chose his words with the precision of a man who understands that the words he uses now will shape what happens next, what protocols get written, what resources get allocated, whether the borehole gets sealed or studied. He recommended it be sealed. He was already thinking about how to make sure that recommendation was followed. Priya sat beside the window and watched the station grow small below them. In the daylight, it looked ordinary, a collection of prefab buildings on a field of white, the kind of place that was supposed to represent human capability and ingenuity, the audacity of making a home at the edge of the survivable world. The borehole was invisible from this height. She thought about what Patel had said, the organism reacting to heat, migrating toward warmth, following the signature of living things through rock and ice and time. She thought about the drainage systems and the water tables and the vast network of underground channels that spread beneath the Arctic, connecting everything to everything else in the patient dark. She thought 1,100 meters was the depth of one borehole. She thought, how many other boreholes are there? She did not say this out loud. There would be time for it later, in the debrief, in the reports, in the careful institutional conversations where implications were followed to their conclusions and outcomes were planned. There would be time. Outside the window, the white world spread to the horizon and beyond, trackless and ancient and still. The engine hummed. The aircraft climbed. Below, in the ice, something waited with all the patience of deep time, undisturbed, intact, dreaming its old dream of heat. The borehole was sealed 6 weeks later. The official report described the organism as a previously unknown extremophile parasite, believed to be extinct, with no confirmed capacity for further spread. The language was precise and reassuring, and almost entirely true. The 6 members of the original Summit Station team all recovered, to varying degrees and with varying timelines. They were monitored for 8 months. They were all ultimately cleared for return to normal life. Dr. Marsh never went back to the Arctic. Dr. Patel, in the notes from his final psychological evaluation, wrote one sentence that the evaluator flagged and then filed without action because it was not technically a clinical concern, and because she did not know what action to take with it. "I can still feel where it was," he wrote. "The absence of it is its own kind of presence. Some mornings I think about the hole and the dark at the bottom of it, and I understand, I really understand, why it wanted to come home." The evaluator read this 3 times. She filed the report. Outside her window, the winter had come early this year, and the first thin snow was falling on a world that was, in all its visible surfaces, perfectly still.